and the judges can now introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. Congratulations on being here. We're excited to talk to you today. My name is Ali Khan. I am an attorney in Chicago, as well as an alum of this program. I represented Illinois at the national competition in 1998.
My name is Ben Glickman. I work for the California Attorney General's office. Also an alumnus of the program. I participated in the national finals for California back in 1995. So congratulations on making it here.
Yeah, I share my congratulations as well. My name is Dan Taubman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver. As I mentioned to your fellow Wyoming team, I'm always glad to meet students from another state that knows that there is a mountain time zone. So we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Can you please introduce yourselves?
I'm Eli Thomas, and I am a senior here at Green River High School.
My name is Olivia Nielsen, and I'm also a senior here at Green River.
My name is Jared Lesinsko, and I'm also a senior at Green River High School.
Wonderful. So I'm sure it's no surprise. Today we'll be doing question 2. So there is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You may begin.
Modern American politics is extremely polarized, although it often seems as if modern political parties are getting out of hand. But political debates and division is not new.
Even George Washington warned about the power of political parties in his farewell address by declaring that although they may now and again answer popular ends, they are more likely to, in the course of time and things, to become potent engines.
Shortly after President Washington's departure from presidency, 2 political parties began to form. And despite the warning, people began to support these factions.
The Federalists and the Republicans, Democrats, such like modern Republicans and Democrats, originally wanted to be voices for the people, in a government system that would be best for the people. Even before this, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists wanted the same thing.
However, these original ideals were easily and quickly misled, while they were changed to further support the views of politicians. This shift can especially be seen in the presidential election of 1800 between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams.
The differing opinions of how to best serve the people and what would be the best overall would lead to severe division that we can all see throughout history and even in modern times.
I want you to recall a relatively recent time in American politics, the 2020 presidential election. Every time I turned on the radio, the television, or opened a news site, I felt overwhelmed by controversy. Maybe you felt the same.
Regardless, modern politicians still debate on how to best serve the people, while also best serving themselves. These arguments are easily split between the 2 political parties.
One newspaper describes this division as such: our citizens are divided into political opinions, and this division of varying sentiments and honest efforts strike deep into personal feeling, producing an attachment to one man, which no change of circumstances can fake, and a hatred of another, which no occurrences can soften.
Sounds relevant, right? This article was published by the National Intelligencer in December of 1800. The same year, political factions began to further divide.
This article does not describe the modern political parties, but rather the original Federalists and Democratic Republicans. Politicians throughout nearly all of American history have been utilizing the tool of political parties to eclipse the views of the people.
Relatively recently, politicians are advancing their use of this powerful tool by allowing citizens to put their political parties before personal views.
Now, party line voting is not a new concept. However, citizens are beginning to blindly follow their parties on a more day-to-day basis rather than just during election season.
A prevalent example of this can be seen by the issues presented during the COVID-19 pandemic. During his term, former President Donald Trump focused on infrastructure of the US economy with the full support of other Republican politicians and citizens.
Now that President Biden is, in essence, focusing on the same infrastructure and proposing similar bills, Republicans are growing weary and concerned.
This begs the question, what do politicians truly believe and support? Is it the idea or is it the party?
In Federalist Paper 10, James Madison declares that liberty is to faction what air is to fire.
It's no doubt that factions or political parties are an ever-growing fire within the United States' modern political culture. It seems as if recent political parties are causing more and more division and corruption while promoting more and more controversy.
John Adams asserts that political parties are to be considered the greatest political evil under our Constitution. Despite the negativity that seems to surround divided parties, not all is bad.
By encouraging political parties, we as citizens are promoting the idea that everyone deserves to have their voices heard and validated on a political scale. If people feel their voices and opinions to be important, then they will be inspired to continue political participation, such as watching debates and voting during election season.
With a unified government, this is not always the case. Although it is often easier to implement ideas, policies, and programs into this government, many people would feel invalidated.
The United States is large, especially on a political scale, and a unified government could simply not provide the guarantee of life, liberty, and happiness to its citizens.
Thank you. Let me ask you this, since this is often a hot button issue as it relates to our modern politics, would you support abolishing the Electoral College? Why or why not?
Well, personally, I don't see much of a purpose for it. One of the biggest reasons why the Electoral College was used is that we didn't have a way to reliably collect all the votes in a timely manner. But whereas we're getting more into a digital age, it becomes much easier for us to do that. And the issues of only having smart people represent is much less impactful now, considering that we all have a base education higher than they had back then. So,
going off of what Mr. Thomas has said, ultimately, the Electoral College served a purpose, and it still does. It needs to be modified to still suit the modern times. It does not need to be abolished, but we do still need something of this sort. It just needs to be modified and changed.
So how would you modify it?
well, we could start by maybe implementing the voting system different, making sure that people knew who they were voting for and who was running their votes for them. Incorporating more of the popular votes in elections into the Electoral College.
Just making sure that information, the education part is out there. Yes, we are in a digital age where information is surrounding us, but making sure that everybody has access to that education would ultimately help our Electoral College system.
To add on another piece that could help with the Electoral College would be that to help adjust the electoral votes to population ratio, because there have been some inconsistencies across state lines.
So recent polls have shown that there are more and more people who are now registering as independents rather than as Democrats or Republicans. So do you think, looking ahead for 10 years, that the importance of the Democratic and Republican parties is likely to decrease?
I do not think so. I think it started out with the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. We went to Democratic Republicans in the Federalists. We went to the Whigs. Now we're in Democrats and Republicans. I think they will change. They may not necessarily be the same name as Democrats and Republicans, but we still will have the divide that we see today.
I do not think that Democrats and the Republicans will have the same name, but they will have the same people, if that makes sense. We will still have a similar groups as we have since beginning of our country.
Like what Eli said, like the names may change, but the ideals will probably stay the same.
So it sounds like you're saying that the kind of the two-party system, whatever those parties are called, but that the two-party system is always going to be. Is that a problem? And are there changes we should make that would perhaps give third parties a better shot?
I personally really do not like the bipartisanship. I think that a third party could really help balance some things out. How to effectively implement that, I'm not sure on. If people have ideas, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, feeding off of what Mr. Thomas has said, we have been through two parties throughout all of American history. We've tried to implement third parties in there within our elections, and it just hasn't worked. So I think the bipartisanship is still going to be a critical part of our future, whether we want it to be or not.
Do you think that perhaps we could reduce the level of partisanship in our country if we mandated that the president and vice president be from different parties?
I think with the divide that we see within our government, especially the divide within the political parties today, it would be ill-effective if we added different political parties as the president and vice president. We would hardly get anything done. These two people are there to support each other throughout the presidential term. And if they were different political parties with different political ideals, we wouldn't get as much done. That is for the benefit of the people.
In my personal experiences as an ASPL for Scouts and SPLs, if we didn't have inlining ideas and motivations, then there would be this disconnect, and that disconnect would help really make it difficult to get anything done. So it could work. It could also end very badly. And I don't think there's a very reliable way to see if that would work or not.
So notwithstanding your comments about how the parties might have trouble working together, can you give us some examples where the parties have collaborated and there has been bipartisan legislation passed?
I think especially if we look at political parties in the past within big events, if you look at, for example, President Roosevelt's New Deal, that was, although very controversial at the time, a lot of people banded together regardless of their political parties and thought what was best for the people during this time, and then supported that presidentialship. And regardless of what politics they believed what was best for the people.
We can find a common enemy to point our guns towards, and we tend to work together to get that done.
Well, what ideologies or principles would you say characterize the two primary political parties today? Like, what do they stand for?
I think personally, although they started off with very different ideals, they stand for a lot of very similar things. We ultimately wanted the best voice for the people. And I think that's still trying to implement that. We are a very vast country on a political scale. And so these systems, these political parties are in essence just trying to represent their people the best, because we can't have one system that can represent everybody.
I mean, and I think it's quite fluid. Like the Republicans, which most of Wyoming is quite red because we like our natural gases and resources, because we grew up in a mining town. We like natural resources. But that in and of itself changes because it didn't used to be that way, and it still keeps changing along that way. So yeah, it's very hard to point down exactly what the ideals are, because they constantly keep changing and shifting to acclimate to the people that they're with and around.
Do you think that they maybe just stand for a desire to remain in power? Like, is that their primary interest these days, to maintain their own power?
I think it very well could be. But ultimately, we see that with some people, but I think other people within that political party are still trying to be the voice of the people. But oftentimes, those people who are still trying to be the voice of the people are not the ones in the spotlight, in the media headlights.
I would go on to say that the parties probably believe that what they desire is best for the country, even if it is very different from the other party's views.
There's a difference between a good leader and a good politician.
What is it?
Well, leaders usually don't.
You can finish your thought.
To maintain your position as a political power, you need to do some stuff for yourself, or else you won't get anything done. My experience with leadership is that you can't do that.
Thank you so much. And a round of applause for the students for all their hard work. Congratulations. And the judges now have some feedback for you.
Yeah, first of all, so echo what I said earlier. Congratulations again for being here. I know it takes a lot of time and effort and hard work to be here. And I know it's not always easy to be on the other side of the table, or Zoom in this case. So yeah, congratulations again. things I really liked about your presentation. You guys were passionate, enthusiastic. I liked how you all participated and jumped in the free response. With regard to your prepared remarks, especially in the historical part of it, I wish you had maybe a few more details about, the divide between Hamilton and Jefferson, perhaps their stance on foreign policy, favoring aligning with Great Britain or France. More talk about the central bank. With the Electoral College question, perhaps a little more about divide between big states and small states, popular vote, perhaps how Nebraska apportions Electoral College votes. So a little more details on that I would have liked to see. But that being said, you guys clearly have your opinions and you're very passionate, articulate about it. And I really enjoyed listening to you. So overall, a very nice job.
Thank you.
I think you did a nice job. Also, I liked your beginning with Washington's farewell address. I think that's really important. And then you also mentioned the Federalist 10, which I think is also very important. That was good. There are a couple of things that you might have looked at a little bit differently when you said that the Electoral College was established because there wasn't a good way of counting votes at the time. I think that maybe a more important concern was that the founders didn't have a lot of confidence in the popular vote. And that we could see from not only from the Electoral College, but when the Constitution was ratified, senators were not directly elected. Supreme Court justices, as you know, are not elected. The House of Representatives is the only place where there was a direct election of people. When Ollie asked you about what happens if the president and the vice president are from different parties, you might have mentioned the 12th Amendment, which provided for just that until the 12th Amendment. I mean, the Constitution provided for that until the 12th Amendment changed that when it was ratified. And then finally, when you say the Democrats and the Republicans are very similar, in some ways that may be true, but a lot of people would take issue with that and say the very reason we've had gridlock over the recent years is because there are significant differences between Democrats and Republicans. But as Ollie said, I think you showed a good understanding of all parts of the question. You did a nice job, and you should be pleased with your presentation this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I thought the prepared remarks were nice. I too liked the farewell address beginning, followed with the nice, kind of history through the Federalist, Anti-Federalist, Democratic, Republicans, election of 1800. You really kind of walked us through all that, which I thought was effective. And I thought you did a good job of teasing out your kind of theme that disagreement isn't new, it's persisted. And the way you use that newspaper article that sounded like it could have been written yesterday, but was really written in 1800. I thought that was an effective way to do that, as was the infrastructure example. When it's my party doing it, I support it. When it's some other party doing it, I don't. I think that's a real concern today. And I thought on the question and answer period, I thought we had a good conversation. You were responsive to the question, and you had your views and opinions. I guess the one suggestion I would make is to try to back up your opinions and views with evidence to the extent you can. Point to the experience in a particular state or city or another country or a study that had been done. And you had some of that, but I think we could have used a little bit more of that. But overall, I thought it was a nice presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for judging.